All right, welcome back. President Trump's letter to 18 of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, which includes AbbVie, Amgen, AstraZeneca, Bristol Myers Squibb, Eli Lilly, Johnson & Johnson, Merck, Novartis, and Pfizer, just to name a few. There was more. I took them out. There's just to name a few, though. He was demanding drug price cuts for Americans. And that letter sent a jolt through pharma stocks in Europe, for sure. Now, Trump's formal letters to major Big Pharma demanding immediate action to reduce U.S. drug prices to the most favored nation levels. We call it MFN, right? The lowest prices, which is the lowest prices offered in any other developed nation, which represents a move by his administration to stop what he calls global freeloading on U.S. pharma innovation. Now, here's his demands were. His demands are to provide MFN prices to all Medicaid patients. He also wants to pledge not to offer lower prices abroad for new drugs than those offered in the U.S. He wants them to sell drugs directly to consumers at most favored nation prices, bypassing middlemen. And finally, he wants them to raise prices abroad and reinvest those gains into lowering prices for Americans. All sounds good to me. The letters state that if the pharma companies refuse to step up and comply with the federal government, Trump will deploy every tool in our arsenal to protect American families from continued abusive drug pricing practices. That's his words, right? The most shocking stat about this is this. Ready? The U.S. comprises less than 5% of the global population, but funds 75% of global pharma profits. That sounds like a deficit, if you ask me. My next guest will have an opinion on this, I'm sure. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Luke Lloyd. Less than 5%, 75% of the profits. Boy, oh boy. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I feel like that's a lot of things where America funds almost everything around the world, and we're such a minority population in the big scheme of things. It's all around. It's not just pharma, but I find it very interesting. Yeah, maybe the European stocks or segments of these companies maybe did not perform very well, but a lot of these companies you look today are actually up. I mean, I actually own a lot of these companies. I own Bristol Myers, I own AbbVie, I own a couple others. My clients are pretty happy today being in those stocks because what I think is going to happen, Trump's all about getting fair pricing to equal essentially what these European discounts, these European nations discounts are getting to kind of come over here to America. What I think is actually going to happen, because anytime, again, the government usually interferes with any kind of free market. I understand when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to drugs, it's a little bit different. It's not necessarily a free market because it's kind of a monopoly in a lot of ways on these things. But what I think is going to happen actually is they're just going to raise their prices on the European nations to kind of get the equal fair pricing. They're not going to bring down the price to here in America, essentially. They're going to raise it so it's equal for everybody, and that means more profits.
Right. I mean, that's a really it's contrarian point of view, and it's really, really interesting because you're probably right. They're probably not going to try to normalize by costing themselves money, right? That's the bottom line.
That's right. And that's how that's how I would think about it. If I was running a business thinking about their shareholders, their profits, that's how I would think about it. So when I'm positioning, again, clients' money or thinking about the future, thinking about stocks, I'm kind of putting myself in these people's shoes. So again, is this a lot of bark? Is there going to be bite to this? When it comes to the Trump tariff deadline, it seems like he actually stuck to this deadline that came today, right? So maybe there's more bite around the corner than people are expecting with these kind of talks and negotiations, whether it's tariffs or these pharmaceutical companies. But these are all questions we have to ask here.
And so for the longest time, the narrative has been like, hey, America's a wealthy country. They should. It's basically their moral duty to be the place where we do all the research and development, spend all their money, come up with a great drug, and then give it to everybody else for pennies on the dollar from what America's paid for. Right? I mean, that's basically been the mantra for I don't know how many years, 50 years.
Yeah, well, it's like use the innovation here in the U.S. and then outsource it to somewhere else like China for cheap labor and then sell it to everybody else for cheap, right? That's kind of been the mantra in a lot of ways. And it's worked out. It's worked well. It's funny. I mean, again, it really comes back to the inefficiency at the government level. You talk about healthcare, you talk about defense spending, you talk about the social safety nets here, you talk about infrastructure spending. We have all of this tax revenue coming in. And frankly, a lot of these areas could be subsidized better. And it does, being the libertarian conservative within me, I hate saying it, I don't like the government spending money, but if you made these other areas more efficient, you wouldn't have to rely on these corporations, these greedy corporations that people say, which frankly aren't that greedy, and a lot of times they aren't that greedy. You could actually subsidize at the government level and allow these companies to still make profit and reward the shareholders if they were more efficient in their spending habits. So I was really hoping when the Trump administration came in here that they would really go harder with the Department of Government Efficiency and really allocate those dollars in much better areas like healthcare spending to alleviate maybe the pain, Medicaid, Medicare, and all of our kind of, especially older folks here in the United States could take care of them a little bit better.
Yeah, interesting you say that about Doge too, because we just had Mike Lee on, and we were talking about the Fed and likes, and he wanted the Elon and Doge to get into these government reporting agencies, the BLS for one of them, like just to find out what the kind of BS is going on behind the BLS, right? And then now the next segment, we're talking about something totally different. We're talking Big Pharma, and you bring up Doge again because you're right. There's so many places within our government that we could find some inefficiencies and get those things checked out and rewrited.
Well, and this is the problem with politicians. This is the problem with governments. It is a lot of bark. Now, I do think Trump has more bite than the normal politician, but I've been using that phrase a lot because it's like the Department of Government Efficiency, really the first couple of months when he got in office, it seemed like every week something new, a lot of work getting done. We haven't heard basically anything recently about the Department of Government Efficiency. So it was a lot of bark at first, a little bit of bite at first, and then the bite kind of fell off. So, that's what happens when it comes to government. That's what happens when it comes to inefficiency. The Department of Government Efficiency is inefficient now. It's very interesting.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know what? Look, the way I look at it is if we get $300 billion, I mean, Scott Bessent says $300 billion is going to come in the coffers for tariffs roughly by the end of the year. Doge has already found close to $200 billion in inefficiencies. I mean, when's the last time your government found $500 billion in inefficiencies and tax money? I mean, it's not very often that happens. So if they can even get that going, because they haven't been up to full speed yet, it bodes well for us going forward, I think. What do you think? You got about 20 seconds.
That's absolutely right. I just want more. I mean, as a tax-paying citizen like all of us here, I just want to see it go up to about $1 trillion, to be honest. I really hope they find more, and I think they can.
You're young. You just want a stimmy check, right? That's all you want. You can put it on FanDuel.
Hey, listen, you can put it on FanDuel. Being a business owner, I don't think we get stimmy checks. Yeah, that's right. I wish I got a stimmy check.
You're going to put it on FanDuel and bet on the Browns, and it's all going to go away. All right. Thanks very much, Luke. Thanks for coming on. Luke Lloyd from the Lloyd Financial Group.